Kansas is often seen as wide, quiet farmland, but beneath its open skies lies a deeper past. Long before towns and highways, this land held hidden villages, sacred sites, and strange stories passed down through generations. From vanished settlements to unsettling legends, the ancient mysteries of Kansas reveal a history far older, richer, and more complex than it first appears. Pawnee Indian Museum State Historic Site. If you arrive at the Pawnee Indian Village site today, the first thing you notice is how quiet it is. The land rolls gently toward the Republican River, and the wind moves through tall grass much the same way it did centuries ago. There are no towering ruins or stone walls rising from the ground. Instead, the history here sits low, close to the earth, almost hidden. That alone tells you something important. This was a place built to live with the land, not to dominate it. Long before Kansas became a state, before fences cut the plains into neat squares, this area was home to a large Pawnee village. Not a temporary camp, not a hunting stop, but a permanent settlement filled with families, elders, children, and daily routines. The people who lived here were part of the Cuartelejo band of the Pawnee, one of the major native nations of the Central Plains. They understood this landscape in a deep, practical way. They knew where the soil could grow crops, where water could be trusted, and where the land offered natural protection. The village stood near the Republican River, which was more than just a source of water. It shaped the rhythm of life. Fields of corn, beans, squash, and pumpkins spread nearby, carefully planted and tended. These crops were not just food, they were survival, tradition, and planning for the future. Farming anchored the Pawnee to this place, while hunting bison connected them to the wider plains. This balance between settled life and seasonal movement defined who they were. At the center of the village were the earth lodges. These were not simple huts or rough shelters. Each lodge was a carefully built structure, designed to last for many years. Thick wooden posts formed the frame. Layers of grass and packed earth covered the roof and walls. From a distance, the lodges blended into the ground, almost disappearing into the landscape. That was no accident. The design protected against wind, cold winters, and hot summers. Inside, the space felt steady and grounded, no matter what the weather was doing outside. Every lodge had a fire pit at its center. That fire was the heart of the home. It was where food was cooked, stories were shared, and decisions were made. Smoke rose through an opening in the roof, carrying prayers and daily life upward. Around that fire, children learned from elders, and traditions passed quietly from one generation to the next. Life here was not rushed. It followed the seasons, the stars, and the needs of the community. What makes this site especially powerful is that one of those lodges is still here in a very real way. When archaeologists began studying the area in the 20th century, they uncovered the floor of an earth lodge preserved beneath the soil. Time had covered it gently, sealing it away instead of destroying it. Post holes showed where massive support beams once stood. The hearth remained at the center. Storage pits revealed how food was kept safe for the winter months. Instead of removing everything and placing it behind glass far away, the decision was made to protect the lodge where it was found. A museum was built directly over it. When you stand inside today, you are standing above the actual floor, where a Pawnee family once lived. You are not looking at a recreation. You are looking at the real outline of daily life from hundreds of years ago. That closeness is rare, and it changes how the past feels. Outside the museum, the land still holds subtle marks of the village. Shallow depressions in the ground show where other lodges once stood. They are easy to miss if you do not know what you are looking for. But once you see them, you cannot unsee them. Each depression marks a home, a family, a life once lived. Together, they hint at the size of the community and the sense of shared space that defined it. For a long time, there was confusion about this village. Early settlers believed it was the place visited by the explorer Zebulon Pike in 1806, when he met with the Pawnee and persuaded them to replace a Spanish flag with an American one. That story became part of local legend. Later research showed that Pike's visit likely happened at a different Pawnee village farther north, in what is now Nebraska. But even that misunderstanding played a role in preserving this site. Because people believed it was historically important, it was protected instead of being plowed under and erased. This is where the mystery quietly settles in. We know a great deal about the Pawnee way of life, but there are still gaps. We do not know the names of the families who lived in this exact lodge. We do not know what arguments happened here, what jokes were told, what fears kept people awake at night. The artifacts left behind tell part of the story, but not all of it. Stone tools, pottery fragments, animal bones, and storage pits show how people lived, but not how they felt. There is also the mystery of change. By the early 19th century, the Pawnee way of life here began to unravel. Disease brought by outsiders, pressure from expanding settlements, and forced relocation slowly broke apart communities that had existed for generations. Villages like this one were abandoned, not because the land failed, but because the world around it changed too fast and too violently. Standing here today, it is hard not to feel that absence. The land itself feels patient. Grass grows where lodges once stood. The river still moves past, uncaring and constant. Nature did not forget the Pawnee, but it did move on. The quietness of the site now stands in sharp contrast to what it once was. This was a place filled with sound, voices, footsteps, laughter, tools striking wood, children running between lodges. None of that remains, yet the ground remembers. The museum does not try to overwhelm you with facts or flashy displays. It allows the site to speak for itself. You can look down at the lodge floor and imagine what it must have been like to live there, to wake up with the smell of smoke in the air, to step outside and see fields growing, neighbors moving about, the sky stretching endlessly overhead. This was not a lost civilization in the sense of being forgotten. It was a living culture that adapted, survived, and endured far longer than many people realize. What makes this place different from many historic sites is its honesty. There is no attempt to turn it into a spectacle. It does not promise secrets or hidden treasures. The mystery here is quieter and deeper. It is the mystery of ordinary life that vanished without leaving names behind. It is the mystery of how strong communities can disappear while the land remains. If you visit today, you may feel a strange mix of calm and weight, calm from the open space and steady wind, weight from knowing that entire lives unfolded here, and most of their stories are now silent. The Pawnee Indian village site does not shout its importance. It waits for you to slow down enough to notice. In the end, this place reminds us that history does not always leave monuments. Sometimes it leaves shallow depressions in the earth, a circle of post holes, a fire pit long gone cold. And sometimes those quiet traces say more about humanity than any towering ruin ever could. Hermit's Cave on Belfry Hill today. The town below slowly drops away behind you. Houses grow smaller, streets quiet down, and the air feels a little different the higher you go. At the top, tucked into the limestone, is a shallow cave carved into the rock. It does not look dramatic. It does not look ancient in the way ruins usually do. But this small opening, known as Hermit's Cave, carries a strange weight. It feels watched, remembered, like the land is holding on to a story it never fully told. The cave sits just below the old bell tower, which is how the hill got its name. From this height you can see for miles. The river winds through the land below, and the plains stretch out in every direction. It is a place of distance and separation, and that is exactly why the legend begins here. According to local history, sometime in the late 1800s, a man chose to live alone inside this cave. No clear records tell us who he truly was. Some say he was a former soldier. Others say a preacher who lost his faith. A few claim he was running from something or someone. What everyone agrees on is this: he cut himself off from society and lived above it, watching the world from the edge. People called him the Hermit. He was not completely invisible. Townsfolk reported seeing him from time to time. A tall, thin figure wrapped in worn clothing, a long beard, eyes that avoided contact. Sometimes he would descend the hill to gather supplies or accept food left quietly by others. Other times, weeks would pass without a single sighting. No one knew how he survived harsh winters up there. No one knew why he stayed. The cave itself raises questions. It is not a natural hollow formed by chance. The walls show signs of shaping, as if tools were used to widen it, that suggest intention, time, effort. Someone wanted this space to exist. Whether the hermit carved it himself or used an earlier shelter is still unclear. There are no firm answers, only guesses passed down through generations. Inside, the cave is tight. You can imagine how cold it must have been in winter, how damp the air would cling to your skin. This was not a comfortable place to live, and yet someone chose it over warmth, over company, over safety. That choice is where the mystery deepens. People do not abandon society without a reason. Some stories say the hermit spoke very little, but when he did, his words were unsettling. He warned people about change, about noise, about the world losing its balance. Others claim he was gentle, grateful, almost peaceful, as if he had found something the rest of the town had not. These stories contradict each other, and that makes it hard to know which, if any, are true. What is certain is that he eventually vanished. No grave was ever found. No record of him leaving town exists. One season he was simply gone. The cave was empty. His few belongings, whatever they were, disappeared with him. Some believed he moved on quietly. Others believed he died there, and the land reclaimed him. A few darker versions suggest he never truly left at all. After his disappearance, the cave took on a different role. Children dared each other to climb the hill at night. Teenagers whispered that you could still hear breathing inside the rock. Some claimed shadows moved where no one stood. Others said the air near the cave felt heavier, as if the space remembered its former occupant. Over time, Hermit's cave became more than a place. It became a symbol, a reminder of isolation, of stepping away from the world, of choosing silence over noise. People projected their fears and curiosity onto it. The less they knew, the more the story grew. There is also a deeper layer to this mystery. Belfry Hill itself may have been important long before the Hermit arrived. High places often held meaning for earlier peoples. They offered visibility, safety, and spiritual distance from everyday life. While no clear evidence links the cave to ancient use, the idea that someone would choose this exact spot to withdraw feels less random when you consider how long humans have been drawn to elevated ground. Standing near the cave today, it is easy to imagine why someone would stay. The view is wide and uninterrupted. The sounds of town are faint. Wind moves constantly, like quiet conversation. It feels removed from time. Hours pass differently here. That alone could pull someone in, especially someone already tired of the world below. But comfort does not explain survival. Winters on the hill are brutal. Wind cuts hard. Snow piles deep. Living here year after year would require strength, planning, and determination. This was not a man slowly giving up. This was someone actively choosing a hard life. That choice continues to trouble historians and locals alike. Was the Hermit escaping pain, seeking peace, or guarding something we no longer understand? Without written records, every answer remains incomplete. Today, the cave is no longer used for shelter. It is fenced off, protected, observed. Visitors stand at a distance and look into the shadowed opening. Some feel nothing at all. Others feel a strange pull, a quiet pressure in the chest that is hard to explain. The power of the place seems to depend on how willing you are to listen. Hermit's Cave does not offer dramatic ruins or carved symbols. Its mystery is human, not monumental. It asks simple questions with no easy answers. Why would someone leave everything behind? What does solitude do to the mind? How much of a person remains when no one is watching? The hill still stands, the cave still waits, and the story remains unfinished. Stull Cemetery Legends. If you drive the back roads outside Lawrence, Kansas, you can pass Stull without even noticing it. A few buildings, open land, long stretches of quiet road. Nothing about it looks dramatic. Nothing warns you that you are near one of the most talked about cemeteries in the state. And yet, for decades, Stull Cemetery has carried a reputation that refuses to fade, no matter how calm the place looks in daylight. The cemetery itself is small. Old headstones lean at odd angles. Some names are worn down so badly they are hard to read. A simple stone church once stood nearby, now gone, leaving only memories and rumors behind. At first glance, it looks like any rural graveyard, but the stories tied to this place tell a very different story. The legends say Stull Cemetery is not just a burial ground. According to local belief, it is one of the 7 gateways to hell on earth. Some versions say there are only 2, one here and one somewhere in Europe. Others say the number changes depending on who you ask. What stays the same is the idea that something dark rests beneath this soil. One of the most repeated claims is that the devil himself appears here twice a year, always at midnight, always on specific dates, often said to be Halloween and the spring equinox. On those nights, people claim the ground changes, the air becomes thick, the silence feels heavy, and a tall, dark figure appears among the graves, sometimes near the remains of the old church. There is no proof of this, of course, no clear photos, no solid records, but the story spread anyway, passed from mouth to mouth, student to student, generation to generation. The closer you get to Lawrence, the more likely someone has heard it before. Another part of the legend focuses on a particular grave, a stone said to belong to a man who was not human at all, but something pretending to be. Some say he was half man, half goat. Others say he was the son of Satan himself. The details change, but the idea stays the same. This grave is wrong. People claim the stone was once sealed shut with iron to keep something from escaping. Some say it was later removed or hidden to stop curious visitors. Then there is the church. The old stone church that once stood near the cemetery is central to the mystery. Built in the late 1800s, it served a small farming community. Nothing about its history suggests anything dark, but legend twisted it over time. Stories claim the church was burned down because it was cursed. Others said it collapsed on its own, as if the land rejected it. Some believed it hid tunnels underneath that led straight into the earth. One of the darkest stories tied to the church involves a child. The legend says a baby was found nailed to the door, sacrificed in some hidden ritual. There is no historical record of this ever happening, no police report, no newspaper article, yet the story persists, whispered as fact by those who swear they heard it from someone who knew someone who saw it. This is how Stull works. Facts blur into rumor. Rumor hardens into belief. By the 1970s and 1980s, the cemetery had gained national attention, especially among college students. Late at night, cars would line the road. Groups would sneak in, daring each other to step between the graves. Some went looking for proof. Others went just to feel scared. Trespassing became common. Vandalism followed. Headstones were damaged. The quiet dignity of the place began to suffer. Local residents grew tired of it. For them, this was not a legend. It was a real cemetery where real people were buried. Family members, ancestors, children. The gap between myth and reality caused real tension. Eventually, the church was torn down, partly to stop people from gathering there. Law enforcement increased patrols. Warning signs went up. But removing the church did not remove the story. People still claim strange things happen at Stull, cars that will not start, watches that stop working, a feeling of being watched even when alone. Some say animals refuse to enter the cemetery at night. Others claim the sky above the graves feels darker, heavier, as if sound itself struggles to move. Skeptics argue there is nothing special here at all, and logically they are right. No evidence supports the idea of gateways or demons. Many of the stories can be traced back to exaggeration, misunderstanding, or outright invention, but logic does not erase feeling, and Stull is a place that produces strong feelings. Part of that comes from isolation. Rural cemeteries are quiet in a way cities never are. Wind moves differently. Sounds travel farther. At night, the mind fills in gaps the eyes cannot see. A shadow becomes a figure. A sound becomes a footstep. Fear does the rest. Another part comes from history. Kansas saw hardship, disease, child mortality, short lives. Many graves in Stull belong to infants and young children. That alone gives the place a sense of sadness. When people say the land feels heavy, that weight may come from grief, not something supernatural. Still, some details remain strange. People report that certain photos taken in the cemetery never turn out right. Faces blur, shadows appear where none were seen, batteries drain quickly. Again, these things can be explained, but when they happen in a place already surrounded by legend, they feel different. Even famous names have been tied to the cemetery. A rumor once spread that the Pope avoided flying over Stull because of its dark reputation. This story is almost certainly false, but it shows how far the legend traveled. When a place becomes a symbol, facts stop mattering as much as emotion. Today, Stull Cemetery is quieter than it used to be. Fewer people visit. Most who do come during the day, out of curiosity rather than thrill-seeking. The road is calm, the graves are still, the land feels ordinary again, at least on the surface. But the stories have not died. They linger in late-night conversations, in online forums, in whispered warnings from locals who say, "You don't want to be there after dark." The power of Stull is not in what can be proven, it is in what people believe could be true, and that is the real mystery. Why did this place, out of so many cemeteries, become the center of such dark legend? Why here? Why not another quiet graveyard on another empty road? There is no clear answer. Sometimes stories attach themselves to a place and never let go. Standing at the edge of the cemetery today, you might feel nothing at all, or you might feel uneasy without knowing why. Both reactions are honest. Stull does not force itself on you. It waits. It lets your own thoughts do the work. In the end, Stull Cemetery may not be a gateway to hell, but it is a gateway to something else. The human need to explain fear, the way stories grow when silence leaves room for them, the thin line between history and myth, and once a place crosses that line, it never truly goes back. El Cuartelejo Pueblo ruins. If you stand in the open land of western Kansas, it can be hard to imagine anything unexpected ever happening there. The horizon feels endless. The sky dominates everything. Wind moves freely with nothing to stop it. This is not the kind of place most people associate with pueblos, stone rooms or adobe walls. And yet, hidden near Ladder Creek, inside what is now Lake Scott State Park, lies one of the strangest and most quietly unsettling sights in Kansas history, El Cuartelejo. The name itself feels out of place, Spanish word sitting in the middle of the Great Plains. Roughly translated, El Cuartelejo means the far quarter, or the distant place. Even the people who named it understood how strange it was. This was a settlement that did not belong here, at least not according to everything we think we know about the past. El Cuartelejo is believed to be the northernmost Pueblo-style settlement ever discovered in North America. Pueblo architecture is usually tied to the southwest, to places like New Mexico and Arizona, not Kansas. Adobe walls, stone rooms, planned structures, none of that should exist this far north and east, and yet the ruins say otherwise. The remains are subtle, low stone foundations, shallow wall lines barely rising from the ground. You would miss them easily if you were not looking closely. But archaeology has confirmed that these were once real structures, built intentionally, occupied for years, and then abandoned. The people who lived here were likely Techuas Pueblo natives who fled north sometime in the mid-1600s. Why they fled is part of the mystery. The most accepted explanation involves Spanish colonial pressure, forced labor, religious control, violence. For some, escape was the only option, and escape meant going somewhere no one would expect them to go. Kansas was that place. Imagine the journey, hundreds of miles across plains, rivers, unfamiliar land, and hostile territory. Families traveling with children, carrying what they could, leaving behind everything they knew. They were not searching for comfort, they were searching for survival. When they reached this area, they found something rare: protection. Ladder Creek cuts through steep rock walls and narrow canyons, creating a natural shelter unlike the open plains around it. Trees grow thick along the water. The land dips and folds in ways that block wind and hide movement. It is one of the few places in Kansas that feels enclosed, almost secret. For people trying to disappear, it was perfect. They built their settlement using familiar methods, stone and adobe-style construction, rooms connected together. Not large pueblos like in the Southwest, but enough to form a community. They planted crops, they hunted, they adapted, but they were not alone. Evidence suggests they lived alongside Plains tribes, likely the Apache, who at the time ranged much farther north than they do today. This alone challenges many simple ideas about Native American history. Different cultures, different languages, different traditions, sharing space, resources, and risk. This was not an easy life. Winters here were harsher than anything the Tossum people had known. Summers brought storms and heat. Food was never guaranteed, yet the settlement survived for years, maybe decades. That alone raises questions. How strong were these alliances? How deep did cooperation go? What did daily life really look like in this unlikely place? Spanish records mention El Cuartelejo, but only briefly. Explorers and soldiers described finding Pueblo people far from where they were expected to be. The tone of these accounts often sounds confused, even unsettled. The existence of this place did not fit the map in their heads. Eventually, the settlement was abandoned. Why is still debated. Some believe Spanish forces finally caught up with the refugees and forced them to return south. Others think pressure from rival tribes made the location unsafe. Disease, drought, or simple exhaustion could have played a role. Or perhaps the people chose to leave once the danger passed, returning home on their own terms. The ruins do not tell us which answer is correct. They only tell us that people were here, and then they were not. That silence is part of what makes El Cuartelejo unsettling. It feels unfinished, like a sentence cut off halfway through. There are no dramatic destruction layers, no signs of sudden violence, just absence. Standing there today, you feel that absence strongly. The creek still flows, the rock walls still rise, grass grows over stones that once held up homes. Nature did not erase the site violently, it slowly absorbed it. There is also something symbolic about where this place sits now. Lake Scott State Park is peaceful. Families camp nearby. Birds move through the trees. The land feels calm, yet beneath that calm is a story of fear, escape, and endurance. El Cuartelejo forces us to rethink simple borders. It reminds us that history does not follow clean lines on a map. People move, cultures overlap, survival pushes humans into places that seem impossible. The mystery